Elon Musk recently completed the acquisition of Twitter, and as expected, the effect has been felt on Dogecoin. If you look at the last few days, Dogecoin price is nearly doubled. Of course, nowhere as close to their all-time high. Still 83% down from the all-time high, but it's nearly doubled. And that speaks volumes of why people think that there might be something in it, right? This Elon, Twitter, and Doge, does it have something? I've tried to go through a number of documents, a number of publicly available information to try and put together this whiteboard, right? To try and connect the dots to see where this really goes. So in this video, I'll really talk about what was the intent for Elon to really acquire Twitter. How will this whole work? What's Elon going to do? How will this work with Twitter? Who are the people who are getting involved? Because knowing who's getting involved means we'll be able to predict, where is this headed, and what is Dogecoin anyway? For those of you who have no idea of this, and finally, will this really work? Right? I put my thoughts together right here, and to do this, I looked at some of the interesting publicly available information, and one article led me to a treasure trove of information, literally, right, which happens to be the trial documents that were released during the trial. And in this particular document, there are a number of conversations that Elon has had with several stakeholders over the months, and we'll try and go through all of that to figure out what is the whole reason or what is really happening here. Right? Let's start with this part of the conversation where Elon actually is talking about EU passing a law to ban Russia Today and several Russian news sources. This is back in May of this year. This is back in March of this year. And he says it's, it might be a little against what the American Constitution really says, because he is an absolute free speech proponent, right? And he says free speech matters the most when, especially when you're hating someone. And so you can see that Elon is totally for free speech, and the people who he is conversing with are also concerned about things that are happening on Twitter, with especially on suspension of handles and so on. And in fact, somebody goes on to suggest that maybe buy it and change it to properly support free speech. And in fact, he also said, can you buy Twitter and then delete it, please? Or can you buy Twitter and make it radically free speech? And that's something that, that comment is what Elon really liked. In fact, he goes on to say, someone else goes on to say, Twitter algorithm should be open source. And he's talking to 100 members of Congress tomorrow on something like that. So will that idea work? And all this is conversations that are happening with Elon Musk. In fact, Jack Dorsey also pitches in. Jack Dorsey says, I believe it must be an open source protocol funded by a foundation of sorts that doesn't own the protocol, only advances it, much like what Signal has done. He says you should not have any advertising model, because governments and advertisers will try to influence and control it. If it's a centralized entity behind it, it will be attacked. So he's trying to say that, move Twitter away from where it is today. And Elon responds to that saying, hey, this is a super interesting idea. Right? So if we just look at those conversations, we can clearly understand the intent, right? And the intent is two-pronged, right? The first one is that for Elon, Twitter is a public town square, and it has to be it has to stand for free speech, and it has to be censorship resistant, right? That's his primary intent. The secondary one, of course, is that it has to be resilient to influence from advertisers and governments. Now, this is what he intends to take Twitter towards, and will Dogecoin be part of that journey? That's what we'll try and figure out today, right? Because in the second part that I'm talking about, this is where we look at how will this work, right? And we'll see some of the interesting comments or advices that people have given Elon. So the first thing that Elon itself in one of the messages says is that I think it's worth both trying to move Twitter in a better direction and doing something new that is decentralized. Right, so decentralized is literally the first important part of how this will work. Will Elon make it decentralized? At least he has some thoughts towards making it decentralized. Then the next one is someone called Will talking to Elon, asking if Sam Bankman-Fried can be a part of it. Right? In fact, he says he's also he also wants to contribute, and he has enough funds, of course, to contribute. So to which Elon asks him how much it is and so on. So one of the people who are getting involved really is Sam Bankman-Fried, who possibly could bring in $1 to $5 billion to the table for this deal, right? So that is one of the important people who came together, and judging by the fact that he is part of the Web3 world, he can bring his expertise into this. So we know there is definitely a Web3 angle in all this. So Will actually says he's worth 24 billion. That's Sam Bankman-Fried, and he could 1 to 3 billion would be easy for him. 3 to 8 billion could be done, and 8 to 15 billion is possible, but require financing. That's huge amount of financing that one crypto entrepreneur would bring in to this deal. So that's pretty interesting on where it's going. Another thing that Elon really wants to crush is crypto scams. So it's good to see that he definitely wants to do that. So a lot of scammers would get crushed. If you go down to the messages, you'll see some of the other interesting things. First thing, that he did not want to be part of the board at that point of time, right? So he talks to Parag and others, and he says, no, I'm not really interested in part of the board. He says, thank you for considering, but I'm not really an effective board member considering I have only 9% at that point of time. So that's what he says. And eventually, if you look through these conversations, that's where you can see at some point of time he says, okay, it needs to buy it full, right, and take it private. That's when he can radically change it than being part of the board. So someone suggests to him, Matthias here, he suggests to him a few ideas on what could really happen. He says, make Twitter the global backbone of free speech and open marketplace of ideas that truly complies with the spirit of First Amendment, and shift the business model to a combination of ad-supported and paid to support quality, solve free speech. He wants to make Twitter censorship resistant. We saw all that. He wants to make it a marketplace for algorithms. Broadly, he has some ideas where essentially blockchain-based payments would come in. No advertisements, wallet integrations, Dogecoin as a currency, all this is going to typically come in, right? So you'll see a lot of people give Elon advice to directly move Twitter into such a direction. And here, Elon itself says, I have an idea for a blockchain social media system that does both payments and short text / links like Twitter. You have to pay a tiny amount to register your message on the chain, which will cut out the vast majority of spams and bots. In fact, one of the things that he wants to solve is the number of bots on the system, right? And could Dogecoin be that currency, because Dogecoin is there are so much of Dogecoin and you can pay with infinitesimally small amounts? Could be. Eventually in the conversations he debunks it, but it's possible that it might come back, right? And then Kimball Musk, Elon's brother, he says, I'd love to learn more. He dug deep on Web3, and the voting powers are amazing and verified. Lots to do here. So even Elon replies back saying, I think a new social media company is needed that's based on blockchain and includes payments. So what we know for sure is Elon is tending towards blockchain-based payments for DMs, for tweets, no advertisers. Dogecoin as a currency could be in this because Kimball eventually suggests it, and wallet integration, of course. Now, they're talking about pros and cons and so on and so forth, and eventually Kimball actually suggests that and Elon again reiterates, my plan B is a blockchain-based version of Twitter, where so you could have to pay maybe 0.1 Doge per comment or repost of that. Now, this is probably one of the first times that Dogecoin is actually mentioned, right? So is Dogecoin going to be the currency? Well, at least Elon has mentioned it. In fact, in this whole conversation, the only currency that was probably mentioned was Dogecoin, right? And that's the interesting part, and that's probably where Sam Bankman-Fried would have come in, but due to several reasons, he eventually does not. And the next thing that Elon is trying to do is he does a very simple math, right? You guys must have all seen the layoffs that are happening at Twitter this week. Number of employees were laid off, but the decision for that probably went back to these messages back in April. Right? Back to the envelope, these are the calculations, right? Jason says Twitter revenue per employee is about 625,000. Google revenue per employee is 1.9 million, and Apple is like 2.37 million. So and he goes on to suggest that if Twitter were to reduce it to 3K instead of 8K employees, that means laying off 5K employees, it could go up to 1.66 million revenue per employee, right? And this is pretty much the thought behind the whole layoffs, right? You can see that the layoffs are definitely happening, and someone suggested, Jason goes on to suggest that a 2-day week office requirement would voluntarily make 20% of employees leave themselves. So a lot of things, especially aimed at getting people back to office, is probably because they just want more people to quit. Right? So you can clearly see the thinking that has gone in all these messages. And here's the interesting part. Right? Governor DeSantis, I think he's the Florida governor, if I'm not wrong. He also is publicly, he's rooting for this whole idea to take Twitter private. So that's pretty interesting. Right? Now, this is where Larry Ellison gets in. Right? So Larry Ellison, as we know, is like a mentor of sorts to Elon, and Elon says that Larry Ellison is interested in being part of the Twitter taking private, and he asked Larry, how much would you want to invest? Larry is like $1 billion or whatever you recommend, and Elon says, whatever works for you, I recommend maybe 2 billion or more, because this has very high potential and rather have you than anyone else. That means Elon is saying that he's asking Larry to invest 2 billion, like almost double of what he wanted to. And it says if it has huge potential, that means Elon knows this is going somewhere. Will Twitter be $1 trillion company? Who knows? But does Elon have ideas for it? Definitely there are several ideas, and more people are talking about it. And in fact, in this whole conversation, it is very clear that the round was oversubscribed. A lot of people trying to get in, and probably it was difficult for Elon to give people enough of shares and all this. Another interesting idea that Jason suggests is membership team remove bots while getting users to pay for real name memberships, $5 a month, $50 a year, and payments, percentage of users who connected bank account and made a deposit, or you can of course have wallet integrations. Creator teams, like give them the best industry split, probably more than what YouTube would give. Transparency team. So these are some of the 5 things that he says. And Elon goes on, and Jason goes on to say that, hey, each of those could be like $250 billion market. So that means roughly the 3 of them is like a $750 billion market. So definitely 2 to 3x of Twitter share price, or whatever price Elon bought it at, seems likely if whatever they're thinking goes through. And they also want to include YouTubers like Mr. Beast and so on. So a lot of interesting conversations in this particular thread, and they go on to talk about monetization of each tweet in some way, right? And that's seriously where I think that DOGEcoin could really come in, right? And eventually Sam Bankman-Fried commits to $1 to $5 billion, but I don't think that really happens because he does not go through with it. Then, so if you look at how will this whole thing work, right? You can see that these are the key ideas, right? Decentralization, wallet integration, probably DOGEcoin as currency, cut the staff by 60%, content creator rewards, real name membership fees, and no advertisements, right? That's what they're trying to do. And who is getting involved in all this? Well, we see that Larry Ellison is putting up $2 billion. Sam Bankman-Fried offered $1 to $5 billion, but eventually he didn't get through. Jack Dorsey still owns 2.4%. He continues to hold his shares. Kimball Musk is a recurring figure. He's Elon Musk's brother, and who is doing a lot of research on Web3. He's the one who suggested DOGEcoin as well. Reid Hoffman and Satya Nadella from Microsoft. Binance CEO eventually puts in 500 million. So I guess Sam Bankman-Fried going out meant Binance CEO could come in, and that means we clearly see there is a decentralization angle involved here. Is Binance going to have some sort of a custodial service for them? We don't know, right? Andreessen Horowitz is another name who came in with 400 million. Now this is important because Andreessen Horowitz is another VC that is heavily invested in cryptos, right? Sequoia again with cryptos, and a bunch of other guys who are mostly financiers and not. I don't think they bring in any sort of domain knowledge, but these are the guys who are really coming in with the crypto knowledge. And that is the pretty interesting part of all this. Now, what else is happening? Well, if all this is going to happen eventually, then you need to understand what DOGEcoin is, right? Now, DOGEcoin started off as a joke. It was literally a joke, right? They just wanted to make fun, and it got heavy publicity due to Elon Musk, and that's how probably a lot of you own DOGEcoin. What is DOGEcoin? Well, DOGEcoin is aiming to be a currency. It's an inflationary currency. Right, so if you go on their website, you'll see that DOGEcoin is just an open source peer-to-peer digital currency, and there are wallets. Their entire they don't have a roadmap. They call it a trail map. So the trail map is something that is community focused. What the community wants to do, it's fully focused around making it for payments, right? Making Dogecoin a currency, right? Making it, making the case for a currency. And one interesting part of Dogecoin is it's one of the most decentralized projects ever, right? And it is still a proof of work coin, unlike many others. This is still proof of work. This is in fact right now the second largest proof of work crypto after Bitcoin. And there are lots of people holding Doge. This could mean that there's already a currency in the hands of a lot of people, and integrating with Twitter, having a wallet there could make it easy, because this is probably one of the most widely held coins, and it is so cheap. So it's highly possible that Dogecoin could come in and do that. It could be a currency. However, one thing for you to note if you're an investor of Dogecoin is that its token economics is inflationary, right? Dogecoin is not a fixed supply like Bitcoin, for instance. The token supply is inflationary. It's rising at maybe like 4 to 5% a year. So you will get diluted by that much every year if nothing happens. But will all this work? Will all this that Elon is trying to do work? Well, I see some pros, some cons, and something where it's undecided. First one is the fact that Elon plus Twitter plus Doge is a deadly combination. Right now, Elon is known to have succeeded in almost everything that he tried his hand at, and across various fields. Right from space to electric vehicles to even payments and whatnot. Elon has done all that, and he's charismatic. Adding Twitter and Doge into the equation, there is some seriously strong things going on there, and you never know. It might as well succeed because of these three things, right? Just $10 billion in payments could take Dogecoin to 3x. If you take a normal equation that to price a currency, if you take the circulating supply, you know that by just making $10 billion a year were to happen in payments through Twitter using Dogecoin, then the Dogecoin price could go 3x from where it is today, right? And if the payments are more, then it could be even more than that. But this is considering 10 billion is not really a lot of money. It's just possible, right? You never know. It's very optimistic at this point of time. But the real question is, will it be Doge, right? That's what is undecided right now. Right? Will Doge be the currency for this? And if it is, then all this really happens. But in one particular chat, Elon actually says blockchain Twitter isn't possible, right? And that was like a little bit of a red flag. Is he like going back and forth on keeping it centralized or moving to a decentralized platform? So that we are not sure where it's really going to go. And Sam Bankman-Fried says he didn't get involved because Musk isn't Web3 focused. In this particular article, he says ultimately decided that Musk did not have enough of a Web3 focus, and that's why he did not go through with it. So if that is the case, if Musk does not actually have a Web3 focus, then this might just fail. And not Twitter acquisition, but rather the Dogecoin part of this might just fail. And all of you holding Doge, optimistically hoping that this works, might be left with a bag of worthless tokens. Well, for now, this is what I think. If you like this whole analysis, then do subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about it, and welcome to the Wave Crypto Club. Stay tuned for more such amazing videos.